At last, there are small electric cars priced comparably to combustion ones, though the EVs in question are only from bargain or emerging brands. One such is the car we look at here, the Leapmotor T03.
The Leapmotor T03 might just be the best small electric car that you've never heard of. Here, we're going to take a closer look. Unlike some other Chinese brands, Leapmotor prioritizes value above all else, but doesn't deliver it in its EVs with drawbacks like overly feeble performance, basic equipment levels, compromised safety and pathetic driving range. Perfect proof of that comes with this car, the Leapmotor T03. As you might guess from this Chinese model's friendly look, there's a surprising amount of European-ness here, both from the car and from the brand that sells it, Leapmotor International. Now that sells the brand's models outside of China, and it's 51% owned by Western auto conglomerate Stellantis. Now their various brand showrooms will be used to sell the T03. Leapmotor was formed in China as recently as 2016 by Zhu Jiangming, an electrical engineer with no previous automotive experience. But they've grown rapidly, already selling 250,000 cars globally and expecting to double that figure by 2030. Providing, of course, that models like the T03 attract a wide audience. And this car, with its emphasis on affordability and technology, just might. You can find out more about this kind of model by downloading the Car and Driving app. And if your interest is specifically on this Leapmotor T03, then stay with us for the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. Tiny underpowered cars can be fun to punt around in their favoured urban habitats, or at least some of them are. Minis and Fiat 500s have long traded on that trait, and this Leapmotor model translates at least some of it into the electric age. Drive it back to back with its closest market contemporary, Dacia Spring, and it feels a far less compromised thing, and acceleration from the single powertrain on offer here will be noticeably more sprightly than in the old combustion-powered city car model you might previously have been used to driving. The power plant in question sees a 93 bhp front-mounted motor energised by a 37.3 kilowatt-hour battery, offering a 165-mile range. That places the T03 somewhere in the middle of the segment. For sure, it's better than the most capable Dacia Spring, which has a 64 bhp motor, a 26.8 kilowatt-hour battery, and 140 miles of range, but not up to the level of a pricier Citroën EC3, which for 30% more money offers you 113 bhp, 44 kilowatt hours and 199 miles. So it comes down to what you want, really. If you think that this Leapmotor hits the price, the power and the range sweet spot, then you might well be favourably impressed by the tight body control and the decent damping. Whichever of the three steering modes you choose, comfort, standard or sport, there isn't the direct instant change of direction that you would get in a Mini Electric, for example, but feedback builds with speed, and it's great for traffic jam twirling around town. The brakes are fine and they're quite responsive too. And while we're on the plus points, apart from a bit of wind noise around the A-pillars, cruising refinement is really impressive. It's better than in some super mini EVs from the class above. This can't quite compensate for the fact that at low speeds you have to put up with a frightful din from the EV sound generator mounted under the rear bumper. It makes a whiny noise that's something like a cross between wind howling and a knackered wheel bearing. A low-speed noise generator is of course mandatory on all EVs, but you really ought to be able to switch it off, and it doesn't have to sound as unpleasant as this one does. It does at least spur you on to get going over 20 miles an hour, but once you do, there are more unwelcome sound effects with drive assist tech that, instead of merely chiming or bonging, interrupts your journey instead with a disembodied voice, which makes patently obvious suggestions about merging traffic, continually admonishes you for fractionally exceeding the speed limit, or like a nagging mother-in-law or something, constantly warns you to drive carefully. Leapmotor's Stellantis group owners really need to make it clear to the Chinese brand's engineers that European drivers really hate this kind of thing. And this is a pity because in most other respects they've done a really good job here. There are 3 powertrain modes, Eco, Standard and Sport. Once you get beyond the city limits, you want to avoid the feeble performance and the rather gloopy throttle response which goes with the Eco setting. Sport doesn't do very much more than artificially weight up the steering, certainly doesn't make you go any faster or improve the 0 to 62 miles an hour sprint time of 12.7 seconds. That's nearly 2 seconds faster than the Spring though. And the top speed is a very modest 81 miles an hour. Talking of settings, there are 3 more for brake regeneration, Eco, Standard and Sport. Sport is the fiercest, and in that setting you can enjoy the kind of one-pedal driving nearly, where it's hardly ever necessary to actually use the brake pedal to slow the car, unless of course you come into a complete stop. You'll need to remember to engage this around town where you can find that you'll really jink around in urban traffic. Plus, great all-round visibility here means that parking could hardly be easier, and the 9.7 metre turning circle is really tight. The T03 is, to suit its urban remit, satisfyingly little, just 3,620 millimetres long and 1,577 millimetres wide, about the footprint of a Fiat 500e, but notably taller, 1,652 mils. Compared to its arch rival, Dacia's Spring, it is shorter and narrower, but 61 millimetres taller, which doesn't do the styling any favours, but does make it more accommodating for rear passengers, as we're going to see quite shortly. It is notably light too for an EV, at just 1,175 kilos. To give you some class perspective, a Fiat 500e is 1,330 kilos. From the side, it's more Kia Picanto than Fiat 500. This Leapmotor model certainly isn't trying to be as much of a fashion trinket as pricier, recently launched small EVs in the segment. You might find that refreshing, or you might think, as we certainly do, that it would probably sell in much greater numbers if it didn't look quite so awkward from some angles. It is eminently sensible as a design though, with these dinky little wheels pushed out to each corner and nice finishing too. The standard 15-inch alloys, the black mirror covers and the contrast coloured roof with its standard panoramic glass top. From the front, the styling is very rounded, and Leapmotor's tried, rather unsuccessfully, to make a feature out of this huge front blanking plate with its centrally positioned charging flap. This sits above a narrow vent supposed to be shaped to look like a smile. The huge smeared back headlamps with these built-in LED daytime running lights look rather as if they might have been borrowed from a last generation Mini Countryman, and these little black lower corner cutouts do, well, they don't do a lot. There's not much to object to at the rear, where the LED brake lights are joined by this black mid-level Leapmotor emblazoned strip. There's a subtle roof spoiler, slim reflectors in the lower bumper, and a T03 tailgate badge that for some reason is red. Let's take a look inside. Well, if you think it looks spacious in here, you're right, it really is. You'd expect it to look cheap as well for the asking price, but unless you arrive with really unrealistic expectations, you shouldn't find it so to any great extent. Yes, of course, there are lots of scratchy plastics if you look for them, on the door cards, for example, and on the lower dashboard. But there are also some really rather nice soft touch materials used in areas you more commonly interact with. It's certainly far nicer than a rival Dacia Spring. Not all of it works. This shiny black plastic mid-level vent strip is a bit in your face, but the dash top covering is nice. The 3-spoke wheel feels good to hold, and there are nice touches like this smart silver start button and the chromed door handles. The big panoramic roof and the lack of a centre console add to the feel of general roominess, and the so-called sporty one-piece seats are reasonably comfortable and supportive, much more so than those of that rival Dacia, although we would have gladly sacrificed some other equipment features to have them fitted out with lumbar support. The two screens are well sized for the kind of car this is, but we're not a fan of the way the central one has inhaled nearly all the dashboard buttons, and it's also partly hidden by the steering wheel, which is unfortunately only adjustable for rake and not for reach. Predictably, given the boxy, glassy shape, all-round visibility is great though. A rear camera is fitted just in case. Through the wheel, you view an 8-inch instrument cluster with a little central T03 model graphic which changes whether you're static or moving. There's no display configurability and a lot of wasted space seemingly not being used for very much, but everything you really need is here with small, rather too small actually, lower screen readouts for time, temperature, range and gear selection. As for this 10.1-inch central screen which uses Qualcomm's Snapdragon tech, there's good and bad here. Lots of kits built into it: real-time navigation, 4G in-car Wi-Fi, voice activation, online Amazon Music, over-the-air updates and so on. But there are black marks for the fact that you have to operate the climate system through it. You've got to fish about for this little lower central climate icon and for the lack of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Leapmotor provides an app control system through which you can get some of that functionality though. As is the fashion, the home screen divides into widget sections, media, navigation and a clock section with retro style flip numbers. But there are some issues. On sunny days, the two screens attract all kinds of reflections. The weird single wiper leaves the top left of the screen untouched, and there is a bit of a delay when you start off before the climate system really gets into gear, which is particularly annoying in the really hot conditions of our test today. Why is it necessary to have the controls for something as essential as the lights buried away on the touchscreen? And given how annoying the voice drive assistant tech is, Leapmotor really should make it much easier than it is to disable it. It's a pity that all these little things might put you off this car because it's so well designed in other ways. At least cabin practicality is reasonable. The glove box and the door bins are big, and there's a narrow cubby between the seats with a cup holder just behind and another at the base of the dash with a 12-volt socket and twin USB ports nearby. The sun visors have Tychy clips too. So, time to take a look in the back, where the 2,400mm long wheelbase and space across the platform is maximised by Leapmotor's clever cell-to-chassis architecture. News of that and the generous amounts of headroom delivered by the boxy shape make you think that it's going to be really spacious back here, and if you're coming from a Mini Cooper, a Fiat 500 or even that Dacia Spring, you'll think it is. There aren't many cars in this class that a couple of 6-foot adults could fit into without too much trouble. But you can forget about the kind of super mini pretensions that you could entertain in a combustion model of this sort, like say a Hyundai i10. Despite this panoramic glass roof, there might be room to wear a top hat back here, but your knees are always going to be crammed against the front seat back unless you or those up front are exceptionally short of stature. It was also disappointing to find that only 2 people provided for back here. Sure, a third central belt would have made for a very cramped space indeed, but that might have been fine for a third small child accompanying your pair home for tea. Still, ISOFIX child seat fastenings are provided for on each side, and the headrests aren't of the type that dig uncomfortably into the back of your neck until you raise them. Stellantis, with the other small cars, take note of that. It's a pity there are no seat back pockets back here, and it wouldn't have hurt to fit a single USB port either. But the door bins are big, there's access to that central cup holder, there's a flattish floor here, and there are grab handles with coat hooks. We'll finish with boot space, which Leapmotor has obviously modelled on a Mini Cooper 3-door hatch because the 210-litre capacity figure's exactly the same. That actually is a little disappointing given that a rival Dacia Spring has so much more, 308 litres there. There's a high loading lip too and a complete lack of underfloor storage, so the charging cables will take up quite a lot of the room that you do have. It'll be fine for school bags and the weekly shop though. It is a bit mean not to provide a parcel shelf, and even meaner not to provide any sort of split in the rear backrest. You will have to flatten that in order to get any large boxy items in, at which point capacity improves to 880 litres. There are bag hooks on either side and a light on the left. From launch and at the time of this test in summer 2025, Leapmotor wanted around £16,000 for the single available spec, which comes with the T03. That's very good value indeed. It's this cheap because the brand makes nearly all the parts for this car in-house. At the time of this test, there were 44 Leapmotor dealers in the UK, all of them familiar local garages stocking other Stellantis Group brands. The marque expects to increase the number to around 80 dealerships by the end of 2025, so you shouldn't ever be too far from one. The sharp asking price we mentioned earlier isn't quite enough to make this car the UK's cheapest new EV. There is an entry-level version of the Dacia Spring at around £15,000, but that's the feeble 45 horsepower version that hardly anyone wants. A more sensibly engineered 65 HP Spring costs about the same as a T03, but it has a smaller 26.8 kilowatt hour battery and 28 HP less power. To get anywhere near the equipment level of this Leapmotor, you'd need the Spring in its top spec extreme form. That costs £1,000 more, and even then you wouldn't get as much kit as you do on this Chinese model. There are a few other options you need to look at in this corner of the market, but they are all significantly more expensive. The BYD Dolphin Surf is worth looking at, but as we filmed, the base version was nearly £19,000 and would take you a significant 30 miles less on a charge than this T03. To get a Dolphin Surf with a more sensible EV range, you'd have to pay around £22,000. That's about the same as Citroën wants for their comparable EC3 Super Mini, but it's about £1,000 less than the cheapest Renault 5 E-Tech or Nissan Micra. A strong value proposition then from Leapmotor, and it comes with an impressively high standard of spec from this single trim level. Let's start with the driving stuff. Now, you wouldn't expect a car of this price to have adaptive cruise control, still less a traffic jam assist system. Now, this will virtually drive the car for you in heavy urban queues. Plus, the T03 also gets a trio of driving and steering modes and a regenerative braking system too. It's a really good start, and it gets even better. Every T03 comes with 15-inch alloy wheels, a panoramic glass roof with a powered blind, heated mirrors, rear parking sensors, a rear view camera and LED taillights. Inside there's automatic air conditioning, an 8-inch instrument cluster, a synthetic leather steering wheel too, an electronic parking brake and sporty style seats. Onto media stuff, which is taken care of by a 10.1-inch central console with navigation, Wi-Fi and 4G, plus voice control, a 4-speaker audio system, online Amazon Music and an app control system. The infotainment system features built-in over-the-air updates, and that allows for the installation of new functionality and software updates over time, and that ensures that the vehicle always stays up to date. The updates can enhance things like the infotainment system, also navigation or cybersecurity measures, even the powertrain electronic control unit that can be optimized to enhance motor, transmission and battery management. As with all Leapmotor products, it's possible to download a smartphone app which allows remote control of numerous vehicle functions. These include battery preheating, that's to optimize charging in cold climates, remote air conditioning control, that's to warm or cool the car before you get into it, monitoring the vehicle status, the energy level, the range, the mileage and vehicle position, and also the possibility to lock or unlock the vehicle via Bluetooth, even without a mobile connection. Finally, let's tell you that there are 3 exterior paint colours offered, but light white, that is the only standard one. You are going to have to pay extra, a substantial £650 more if you want either Starry Silver or this test car's Glacier Blue. Right, on to safety. Now we have to be careful what we say here, but if we tell you that in its original form, the pioneer in this segment, Dacia Spring, received a 1-star Euro NCAP rating back in 2021, that might tell you quite a lot of what you need to know about safety standards in this corner of the market. To be fair, safety systems on the Spring have improved, but it still can't offer quite the kind of crash protection which you would get on a conventional combustion Super Mini. But Leapmotor wants to change things. Now the T03 hasn't yet been Euro NCAP tested, but it is safe to assume that when it is, the results will be comfortably better than those achieved by its Dacia rival. That's partly because 68% of its body is made from high-strength steel and the structure features energy-absorbing boxes. This body-in-cage structure uses a one-piece, all-aluminium anti-collision beam and high-strength steel format. It also helps that there's an awful lot of standard safety kit for the money. All the passive stuff, of course, twin front, side and window airbags linked to an e-core system, plus rear seat ISOFIX fastenings, tyre pressure monitoring, hill start assist and a complete portfolio of ADAS camera safety kit, which Leapmotor says will be further improved over time via the over-the-air update system we mentioned earlier on. You certainly get a lot of camera safety features that you probably wouldn't get or expect to find indeed at this price point. But as we told you earlier, in our driving section, a number of those are accompanied by unwelcome spoken admonishments. There's really not much point in providing a whole lot of camera safety features if the first thing that many owners are going to try to do is to attempt to work out how they can turn those camera features off. Also needing work is the rather jerky adaptive cruise control system that we mentioned earlier on. But anyway, let's cover what you get, and not only things like automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, intelligent speed assistance with traffic sign recognition and forward collision warning. There's also blind spot detection, driver drowsiness and attention warning, advanced distracted driver warning and door open warning. There is 2 lane keeping assist, but it is rather annoying that you can't disengage that without stopping and shifting the car into park. The Chinese brand really has set a new segment standard here. It just needs to make these features rather more user-friendly. We gave you the EV mileage figure in our driving section, 165 miles, providing you keep the car in its most frugal eco drive mode. Now you should be able to reach that figure even in the winter months, and that's thanks to a cloud-based system which monitors the battery to keep it at optimal temperature. Also helping here with the range figure are the thin 165 section tyres, the brake regeneration system and a low drag coefficient of 0.26 CD. Detracting from it is the rather chunky curb weight of 1,175 kilos. That's 229 kilos more than rival Dacia Spring, probably because of this Chinese model's higher levels of standard equipment and its larger battery, of course. Efficiency is officially rated at 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. That's a bit behind the 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour figure of the Spring, which, as we told you in our driving section, in its volume 26.8 kilowatt hour form goes 25 miles less on a charge. What about battery replenishment times? Well, the DC charging rate is pretty slow. It's up to just 45 kilowatts, but better than the rival Dacia, which can only charge at up to 30 kilowatts. DC charging can be completed from 30 to 80% in 36 minutes. For home use, there's an onboard 6.6 kilowatt charger that can offer AC charging 30 to 80%, a top up from a 7.4 kilowatt wall box in 3 hours 35 minutes. A full 7.4 kilowatt wall box charge, that'll take 6 hours 30 minutes. There's a 4-year or 60,000 mile warranty and the industry standard 8-year 100,000 mile battery guarantee. Maintenance should be pretty straightforward thanks to the brand's network of UK Stellantis dealerships. As usual with an EV, benefit in kind tax is low, rated for the 25 to 26 tax year at 3%. You will have to pay VED vehicle tax at the standard rate in Band A and the London congestion charge too, but London ULEZ zone motoring is free. Insurance might be more expensive than you're expecting. The T03 is rated up at Group 25. That's on a par with the Dacia Spring, but it's higher than plenty of super minis in the class above. You can thank Leapmotor's unknown brand status for that. You would also think that that might hurt this T03 when it comes to likely depreciation. Actually, it's not too bad. Experts reckon the car will still be worth around 44% of its original value after 3 years and 36,000 miles. That's about the same as the Spring, but it's much better than, say, a Fiat 500e, which only hangs on to 31 to 38% of its value over the same period. Service intervals for the T03 are every 12 months or 12,427 miles. That's 20,000 kilometers. Now, a common headache with new brands, particularly Chinese ones, entering our market is parts supply. That means that if something breaks, you'll have to wait ages to get it fixed, but not with this car. Because Leapmotor makes pretty much everything for this car itself, including virtually all the battery, the brand doesn't have to source parts from outside suppliers. And it says that the UK dealer network already has very ready access to virtually every T03 part you might need. So that is very good to know. There's a lot to like here for the money Leapmotor's asking. For the many customers who would ideally want something like a more affordable Fiat 500e, but with the 5 doors and the practicality of an electric Fiat Grande Panda, a T03 might be just about ideal. The Dacia Spring was supposed to meet that kind of need, but this Leapmotor model trumps that Romanian rival in most of the areas that really matter here. Drive range, power, equipment and rear seat space. Even value if you work out what you get. It's an impressive first effort from this Chinese maker in this segment. But as we've said throughout this review, the end result still needs a bit of work if it's going to really impress European customers. That is surprising given that Leapmotor is supposed to be a Europeanized Chinese brand. All of the little issues that we've highlighted here, though, could be quickly dealt with by a Stellantis-influenced mid-term model updates, and in the future, they may well be. But for the time being, you might well think that there's really nothing that you couldn't live with here, provided you didn't mind the rather curious looks, what else, the tiny boot, and the fact that rather too many functions are controlled by the cabin's touchscreen. An emotive name would probably also help this Chinese brand's cause here. If you tell the neighbours you've bought a Fiat 500 or a Renault 5, you're going to sound on trend. The purchase of a Leapmotor T03 sounds a bit like the acquisition of a domestic appliance, but if you don't mind that, then certainly check one of these out. At last, a small EV that's properly priced, free of onerous range restrictions and accessible to almost anyone. It's been a long time coming.